The deal is this. Tell you, when I was a kid, I read Dropper Anton Wilson and all this real. Tell you, when I was a kid, I read Dropper Anton Wilson and all this real. But I'm pissed. But I'm pissed. Come on. What?
And I'm Gary Butterfield.
And this is Days of Future Cast, the podcast where Gary and I are covering a lot of X-Men comic books. We are currently covering Grant Morrison's new X-Men run from New X-Men number 115 is the comic book we're going to be covering today. Gary, how are you today, sir?
Good. Excited to get into it. Something I meant to mention in one of the either previous two episodes is how good is the new X-Men logo with like the symmetry?
Yes.
The diagonal symmetry and vertical symmetry. Symmetry.
Super good. Also, something we should have probably mentioned, how good is our new logo?
Oh, yep.
2 episodes too late. Sorry to my boy Wayne for completely forgetting about that.
Sorry. We were too distracted figuring out how we were going to do this. Yes. So I know that is that's no good. We could record like a little bumper at the beginning.
Yeah, I probably
that first episode, just so we're not monsters.
Yeah, but we got good art made, so go check all of that out. It's really, really good. daysoffuturecast.com. Gary, I have a question for you real quick. This particular arc we're in is E for Extinction. If you had to pick an X-Men arc based on either G or B in the same format, what would it be?
Maybe like like B is for Banshee. I don't know.
There you go.
Like it just says he just shows up.
I was gonna do J for
G
Jubilee.
Is for Glob Herman.
Yeah.
I think I would do G is for Glob Herman. Glob Herman's pretty fun.
Yeah.
You know,
I like it.
So
I like it.
Less thematically rich than this.
So we're gonna pick up right where we left off with our villain Cassandra Nova taking a very schlubby offshoot second cousin twice removed by marriage Trask person dentist into the master mold, and they are at the master mold's face, and basically she's saying like, hey, he's basically like, oh, I didn't realize I was about to, when I woke up this morning I didn't realize I was going to exterminate 15 million people, and she's like, they're not people, they're mutants.
Yeah, they're mutants. Yeah, remember, dehumanize them. She's playing the long game, which we'll learn in this episode.
Yes.
And then she's like, speaking of mutants, there's some on their way. And this is Wolverine and Cyclops on their way. They're in the X-Jet. Ugly John wakes up just in time for the X-Jet to be attacked by these new Sentinels, which the designs on these things I love. They still all have the little helmets.
Yeah.
So like they've got the little faces, but they've got weird little fly bodies and stuff. It's extremely charming.
On the page right before that, on our like 2-page splash, I love the fact that like they launch these murderous Sentinels, and like the view that we get it from it is just like the master mold sitting there, and then all of these things like flying away, like rocketing away. Like it's not, there's almost no like grand, like it's not like a huge thing, right? Like this wasn't a huge dramatic moment. It happened in the top right corner of a panel. Like it's just like, we're gonna do this, and then there's like all of the X-Men, and then there's like I don't know, like it was just a real cool way to be like, all of these things have launched. Now we have to deal with what's here though.
It's part of that thing I mentioned, how I like how Frank Quitely draws things floating in space, which happens a few times in this issue.
Yes.
So we come over there, they determine that they're Sentinels. They determine that's a master mold. It's mass producing them. They don't know these Sentinels. These are new Sentinels, but they're dealing with it,
I love when these Sentinels attack the plane and they start ripping stuff apart, basically. I just love how fucking like blasé Scott is about this. Like, oh, engine 3 is out. And like, there's this line that I mentioned, I think in the in the first episode of just, oh no, it's not actually here, but like just Scott's line of like, I've survived more jet crashes than any other mutant ever.
Yeah. It's very funny.
It's just a really
and both
line.
of them are very blasé about it because they're Sentinels, right?
Yes.
Like they're the jet's going down, and like Wolverine, again with this smirk, like this is a very smirking Wolverine. Like, how much money do you think Chuck paid for this piece of equipment? And Scott, when he says that that line, he's like, I've survived more jet crashes than any other mutant alive. Relax, insurance takes care of everything.
Super good.
So
who,
yeah,
like, is fucking Geico?
Who's insuring? Yeah, Geico.
Is Flo like the fucking agent for Charles Xavier? Is that what's happening right now? Like, can you imagine calling up? Yeah, I need crash insurance on my fucking $5 million plane or whatever. What
they found out the Affleck duck is a mutant, so they were able to kind of leverage that.
Wasn't there some sort of weird Affleck Howard the Duck thing that happened at some point? Am I making that up,
Maybe.
or is that just a joke or something? Yeah. Anyway,
I don't know. Possibly.
The next page, as they're crashing, we get one of my favorite lines in this, which is Wolverine saying, "I love your icy calm lunacy under pressure," which is a very apt way to describe Scott Summers sometimes.
Well, he says it's Scott, and then Scott has the perfect response, which is "Call me Cyclops during a mission." So good, so incredibly good. And of course, like Ugly John is freaking out. So they both do their auto destruct keys.
Yeah.
They press the buttons for the ejector seats, and they all get ejected out. Here's this thing where like Wolverine is killing one of the Sentinels in midair.
I love it, dude.
That
I love it so much.
Again. And the jet blows up. This is just really good action,
yeah.
Which I think Frank Whiteley is really excellent at.
This panel of like all of the weird little chicken sentinels that have just gotten into the cockpit and like just can't wait to get their grubby little paws on all this cool technology, and then the countdown hits 0, and you could tell they're all like in a like a Pixar movie, like they would all like look at each other like, oh! Right, like it's exactly that thing. And then everything explodes, and it's great.
Yeah. They all land. They all kind of crash land. And Wolverine's like, hey, these are some weirdo Sentinels. And he's like, well, that doesn't, all we need to know is that they're designed to kill mutants. We have to take them out. We have to save John. And the Sentinels start doing diving runs. These other like robotic Sentinels we don't get to see a lot of, but again, are really cool. Look really kludged together. And start shooting at them.
Also, shouts to like having an actual height difference between Scott and Wolverine. Like that's a very small attention to detail that I can really appreciate.
It does not always happen.
Yes.
In this, so this is where John, is like, hey, do you have any useful mutant talents we can use? He's like, I have 3 faces and they're all this ugly. They all look like a pig.
And you and I have talked a lot about like useless mutant powers, and like Grant Morrison doing this kind of thing. I know it's not the first time we've seen this in the X series as a whole, but like, I don't know, man, it's like, my mutant power is having 3 faces, and that kind of sucks. Also, I'm from Australia, and you're taking me to New York. Yeah. I don't have my passport.
Yeah. So this is just basically an action scene where Cyclops and Wolverine are both fighting the Sentinels, but getting a little overwhelmed. Again, that Wolverine sense of humor in this, where he's like, I'll try talking them down, and then just runs forward, slashing them. They're using pistols, which I love. Like they're just holding this, because the whole idea of these Sentinels, the reason why they're scary is they use anything available.
Yes.
So they just kind of kludge themselves together. But they both get captured.
Yeah. And notably, Scott's visor gets broken.
Mm-hmm.
So he is effectively blind for a little while.
Mm-hmm. Switch back to the mansion, where Beast is composing a love letter to Trish Tilby, his girlfriend, who's a journalist. She's appeared in the comics a bunch. Kind of a major character from the 90s.
Yes.
So.
And then in the middle of this, he has an idea.
Yes.
And we go back over to Professor X and Jean. Xavier is like in the sickbed situation. I love the very small action of just Jean like wringing out a sponge above the sink and like floating it over to her using her telekinesis ability. Like, I'm going to stand here with my bedside manner, but also like do the shit on the side is always like, I love when TKs like just do like cool shit with their ability. Let's not
in like the background.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is not even like cool shit, just does like mundane shit, I should say.
What I would do with it.
Constantly, jerking off constantly.
I would never touch my dick with my hands.
Never, not a single time.
There's also, this is full of great moments, because there's also the thing where he's trying to get out. She's kind of quizzing him about the gun. And he's just like, I have the mind. I have to be prepared to make this gamble. I have to get back to Cerebra. Fetch my chair. And Jean says, well, that might work with Scott, but it's not going to work with me.
Definitely not going to work with me. Yeah,
and definitely would work with Scott. The thing that Beast, the idea that he had, or what happened was he lost radio contact with Logan and Scott.
That's what it was.
He comes in there, and then this is really well paced, because he's like, we have to use Cerebra to get in touch with them. Hank, give me my chair.
Which like folds so well with the Xavier that we just got finished talking about from the Dark Phoenix movie, of just completely like just blinded to his own privilege, right? Like just completely blinded to his privilege and his like the expectation that of course Hank will help him out with this, or Gene will help him out with this. And honestly, love Gene kicking that back. I'm like, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah. It's super good. Again, it feels lived in. Like these people have known each other for a long time, and it feels like it. We cut back over to Cassandra Nova, and this is kind of the finale of the Trask character. Like he's, they've already sent an order to the Sentinels to kill. They're referencing something in the past. Like, this is evil what I've done. I've sent people out. And she has this sense of humor in this, where she's like, when they hear why you launched 4 supersonic death machines at a densely populated area, they'll say, by God, he was evil, but evil in a good way. Like she's just like fucking with him. Because as we'll find out, this is where she calls him and says, like, you're actually excited by this power. You dream about having mutant slaves. And then she's like, I've only really kept you alive long enough to memorize your DNA, and then reaches into his fucking chest and face.
Yeah. This panel where she's like reaching in up under his chin, and her fingers are coming like out of his orifices, out of his ears and eyes and nose. It's just, it's so fucking creepy and weird. Like, you just never see shit like this. Like, this goes back to that body horror thing that I was talking about. Like, it's just fucking weird, man. Like, I was like, what the fuck is this chick doing? What is her mutant power at this point? Like, she can like telepathically control corpses. She's copying his DNA and reaching into his brain. Like, what is she?
Yeah. Just really scary is what she is, and all kinds of, again, really great lines. Like, I don't hate you. Does the gourmet hate the steak? And what she's done, so he dies. And the Sentinels come over to kill Cassandra Nova now that he's no longer alive, and she stops them. She's got his DNA in her voice.
Yes. So the Sentinels are now at her command, and now she's going to turn around to deal with the 3 mutants that came from the air. The first of which is Ugly John, aka Steve, the mutant. Poor guy.
Yeah.
And she basically doesn't waste a lot of time and just shoots the guy with like some sort of ray gun something.
Yeah. Blast him. In the background, there's a news report, and we don't get the full details about it, but we're hearing about so news reports that sound like they're about Sentinels.
Yeah.
Like big creatures made out of metal and glass. They shoot him. This wakes Wolverine up. Because of the smell of his face being fried. And he comes out and attacks Cassandra Nova. And she just, like, he's got his claws there, and he's an X-Man, so he's not just going to immediately murder him. I'm sure he wishes that he had eventually. And is just kind of having a hard time with this whole thing. Like, the Sentinels are all still around. John is dying. And he doesn't know exactly what to do. He's basically just trying to get answers out of her. While Scott Summers mercy kills John.
I want to go back a little bit, because there's a really clever bit of foreshadowing where, like, right before she attacks John, like she's carrying this giant syringe full of something, and he's kind of worried about it. She's like, "Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you with this," and she injects herself in it. And that's not like going to come into play until like 3 or 4 issues down the line. And it's just something like she's poisoning her body, or putting something in her body that's going to negatively affect it, because she kind of knows the sequence of events that's about to happen. She knows that she's probably going to get captured and taken to the mansion, and she's going to get an opportunity to unfold her plan against Xavier and all this other stuff. And it's just super cool. Like, not even like just one panel kind of thing. So.
Yep. Yeah. It's all been planned, Cyclops mercy kills John, says, look into my eyes, and kills him. And he's basically says, like, listen, I know exactly where you're at by the sound of your voice. I've been doing this forever. If you try to hurt somebody else, I'll kill you. And Wolverine's like, it's too late. Look around. There aren't a lot of Sentinels around here. They've already left. And look at her. She's laughing. What else did she say that she thinks is so funny? Where did she send the Sentinels?
And we switch over to Genosha, where Emma Frost is teaching a class of obvious telepaths who have, and I don't know this for sure, but doesn't this look like all of like the high school rejects, right? Like, this looks like the bad kid crowd in PE.
Yeah. Yep. 2 of them show up. Yes. Weirdly enough, the 2 on the left. The one who looks a little bit like Dust, I don't know if that actually is Dust, who's a character who's going to show up later. The one on the left shows up in at the mansion.
Oh, weird.
Later. I don't know if it's just reusing the drawing, but during the part where Cassandra Nova takes over the students and makes them attack Wolverine, that's one of the students. He's dressed like that.
Oh, interesting.
So,
maybe he had a twin in New York. Who knows? I like the like weird dated nature of this because she's like, okay, obviously you guys didn't do your homework, so instead we're gonna break into celebrities' minds and find out what's really going on between Tom and Nicole. I'm like, dude, that's so far.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Tom went through a bunch
2001.
of weird shit and now is on the other side of it somehow. He's beloved again. I don't know what's going on.
Never could have predicted.
And then there's one extremely goth-looking mutant. Apologies if this is actually like a named character that I just don't recognize, but
It's Negasonic Teenage Warhead.
oh, that's
This
right.
is the
That's
comic
right.
version of Negasonic Teenage Warhead.
Yes.
Yep.
You know, we always talk about like what a weird character to pick out of for the Deadpool movies, but just to pick the name. But like, I always forget that it's this person. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We see her corpse later.
Yeah. So she basically says like, hey, I know this is all fun and games, but I've had the same dream 100 times tonight. Everybody is going to die. It's going to happen like right now. And sure enough, all of these Sentinels are starting to descend on Genosha. Notably, we see like Magneto in a chair with an old man blanket over his legs. Like, what's going on with Magneto right now? no clue.
Yeah, I actually don't know Magneto's status quo at this point, other than the fact that he has Genosha. But a Sentinel that is shaped like a fist with jet wings,
fucking dude,
smashes into him.
I love it. Like, if that's not some like glorious, like just real like crass sci-fi tech right there, I'll just fucking love it.
Mm-hmm. Super, super good. And the population of Genosha falls in real time. You know, Xavier is watching it on Cerebra, and it's just overwhelming him as it goes from 11 million to 8 million to 800,000 to 763. This just like incredibly rapidly.
This panel of like Xavier and Cerebra is a giant head looking at this like blue ocean with the dot of Genosha in the middle of it. Like he's that far. Like his telepathic power is that huge, and he's having to experience all of this, and I can only imagine the pain that he's going through right now.
Yeah, no one saw it coming. They were drinking tea, making love. All of those lights gone out. No one saw is the last line of the comic. Yeah, and that ends up being the end of this issue, which this episode of this show went a little bit quicker because there's a lot of action in this episode, which goes a little quick when you're explaining it. Not as much narrative stuff happened, but it was still very important. And, good call on pointing out that syringe thing, because that is going to be payoff. Like, the foreshadowing has begun.
Yes, absolutely.
It is hard to, overstate how big of a deal this was. Mutants had become kind of a big thing in this. There were 16 million of them. In Genosha. They had their own nation. That had been a thing for a while, ever since Genosha got taken over by mutants, after the mutates and all that extinction agenda stuff. And this is Magneto. So, like, Magneto has died, according to the status quo of this. Like, you don't see the body. It's not, it's not proof for comics, but this was a big, shocking thing to have happen.
Absolutely.
And these first 3 issues are all big, shocking things. And
I like, as a guy coming in kind of cold on the X-Men universe at this point, like realizing that, like, showing that there were 16 million mutants and showing like Emma Frost in this teaching position, and then like immediately pulling that away from me, and like it's 60 million to 763, like in the drop of a fucking 4 panels. Like, what the fuck? Like, how is the world going to handle this? It's a significant event. Like, I was fucking like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, and it's dealt with. Like, it becomes a thing after this. Like, characters reference it. Kids talk about it. Like, mutant kids, like, this is a major event in their life. And it influences them. Like, it is a contributing factor to, like, my favorite arc in this run, the Riot Xavier's arc. That character's motivations and stuff. So it ends up having a really long tail, not least of which just the Magneto part.
Yep.
But when you know the motivation behind this, when you know that Cassandra Nova is just doing this to hurt Charles Xavier, what a fucking knife twist, right?
Dude.
Like, if you were trying to hurt that dude, this is the way to do it.
Especially with the Magneto angle on all of this, of like, taking like your in theory your ally at this point, like your old enemy that was your friend and now has become an ally with you, and like the leader of a nation of mutants, and like part of the peace process for humans and mutants to understand one another. Like, and all of that is gone in the blink of an eye, and like you're there to experience it telepathically. Like, that has to be fucking terrifying. So
she knew, like, she planned for everything, basically, and just watching her kind of plan and every little bit of it play out over, like, not just this arc, but multiple arcs, including arcs where she is not the primary villain. Like, we're going to spend some time where it's not about her. And it's still her plans kind of cooking in the background. It's really good long-term plotting.
Absolutely.
Of this.
Really,
Really good.
Super good. Super excited to like just get more and more into this. Like I going through the comic and like reading it and then like going through it almost page by page with you on the podcast just makes me want to like consume all of it tonight. Like I was going to play Death Stranding, but now I might actually just read X-Men comics. So
I encourage that change. Straight upgrade. So yeah. Thanks everybody for listening. If you like the show, head on over to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. If you have feedback about us, the format or anything like that, please reach out.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy is on Twitter at JG Greer.
Gary is at Gary Buh, B-U-H.
Yep.
The podcast is at DOFC podcast because DOF podcast is a totally different podcast that we get confused with all the time.
Down a fuck. So we are interested in hearing your feedback. Thank you for your patience and support with change. And we love you, and we'll see you in a bit.
See you soon. Bye.